Hello there, and welcome back to the Codex. So, today I'm bringing you what is my second video on Dagath, because she is exceptionally good, and I have switched over to a new build. Partially, it's a build that, I'm a little bit behind the game on. It's using Phantom Eyes, but there's a few other things that I've done to really try to maximize the efficacy and the fun of this build. First, let's go over the shards. So, it is very high investment, per usual. You know me. I like to go hard when I like a Warframe. So we're using 4 Tau-Forged Crimsons and 1 Tau-Forged Amber. 2 of the Crimsons are for ability strength, so that gives you an extra 30% strength. The other 2 Crimsons are for ability duration, so that gives you 30% duration. And then we have 1 Amber casting speed shard for 37.5% casting speed. If you were to not use any shards in this build, except for 1, like I often say, use the casting speed shard at the very least, because this makes her feel dramatically better to use, primarily when you want to cast her 4th ability, Recallie's Cavalry, because that has a pretty noticeable casting time. So even if you don't have any of these Crimsons on, the build's still going to be good. Just make sure you at some point can spare a casting speed shard, ideally. Now let's hop into the actual build here. So here's the Dagath build. Now, one note about the expensiveness about how it looks is that you don't actually need an Umbra Forma like I have. If you notice, I have 6 capacity left. So if you were to instead leave this blank, so you have it cost the full 16, and you forma for Spectral Spirit instead to cut this price down, which means that you have every single spot polarized except for the Emerald Intensify, you are able to copy this exact build if you want to without using an Umbra Forma. Now, if you want an even cheaper version of the build with no Umbra Forma and less regular Forma, if you're a newer player, for example, there's a lot of things that will cut down on the Forma cost for this. For example, if you don't have Prime mods yet, like if you're using regular flow and regular continuity instead of the primes, and if you don't have Rumble Intensify yet, for example, all of that will massively cut down on the cost. Or even if you do have these, but they're not max rank yet, they'll still cost less. If you don't have Prime Surefooted yet, or you just don't use it, this is a massive cost decrease as well. Any of those combinations of either lacking those mods or not having some of these rank 10 mods max rank yet will reduce the amount of Forma that you need. So you can shave off 2, 3, even 4 Forma, depending on the exact version of this loadout that you're going for. Now, in terms of going over the actual build here, you can see it's highly duration and strength heavy. Also partially, again, because of those Archon shards, but also the mods we have on here. We got Blind Rage, we have Umbral Intensify, Narrow-Minded, Overextended, and Prime Continuity, all adding to our duration and our strength. Now, you do want positive duration, at least slightly, so I'm sitting at 124 here, between the combination of Overextended and Narrow-Minded, somewhat combating each other. The reason for that is because I'm using Phantom Eyes as the helmet for Jade, which is what I was talking about earlier when I said this was actually a common build when Jade first came out, that I'm now playing around with a few, tweaks to it and whatnot. Phantom Eyes is exceptionally good on Dagath. So it's good for the reason that's good on any Warframe, which is the fact that it gives you both an armor strip and a slowing effect on the enemies that you look at. But it also has a very interesting synergy with Spectral Spirit, Dagath's augment here. So if you look at this augment, it says immediately assume spectral form, 100% chance for weapons and abilities to apply Doom. Kills outside of spectral form decrease its cooldown rather by 1 second. So it's talking about this effect right here, Doom. This is what gives you a crit damage bonus against enemies. So 2 things here. 1, the reason why I replaced her 1 instead of her 2, even though I never actually manually cast Doom thanks to the augment, you actually want to keep Doom, because if you helmet that off, you lose its power strength scaling. So the automatically casting version of it from the augment will only be at base strength, as opposed to the over 300 strength this build actually has. And yes, this build actually is over 300, because between Arcane Ice Storm and Multi-Augmented, these give you 100% strength. So this build is actually 313, not 213. Now, back to the funny synergy. So Spectral Spirit, when it says chance for weapons and abilities to apply Doom, since Phantom Eyes counts as an ability hit on enemies when you look at them, this actually automatically applies Doom for you, literally just from looking around your screen. So you just look at enemies, you say, be not afraid, with all your angel eyes around you, and boom, they get Doom on them, as well as the armor strip, as well as the slow, and those stack up to be a 90% slow and a 100% armor strip. Very potent, extremely good. Also works on acolytes, for example, and Demolist, so some of the really tougher enemies that you might like that effect on, it does work on. Now back to the arcanes here. I mentioned Arcane Ice Storm. This is an interesting arcane that's not used on a lot of builds. Builds, can't speak today. Not used on a lot of builds because of its condition requiring you to freeze enemies. So you do need either a certain kind of Warframe or a certain loadout. So in order to do that, I'm using the TennoCreate, which I just think is a very good weapon in general. And it also provides synergy to this build by instantly and very quickly freezing enemies, thanks to being a corrosive cold build. Well, technically corrosive cold magnetic because of my progenitor. So you get a few benefits here. One, you're able to trigger Ice Storm for that extra duration and strength, and Dagath really likes both of those stats, especially the duration, so that she can stay invulnerable longer from her third ability. Also, if you do have this Photon Overcharger augment, this makes enemies drop more health orbs when you freeze them. So this is, again, just another form of energy sustain. So it's very good. Energy sustain on Dagath is not going to be hard at all between the combination of Prime Flow and Equilibrium. Even if you don't have a companion with Synth Deconstruct on, which I usually recommend for Equilibrium builds, Dagath herself actually generates a ton of health orbs because every single kill that you get while you're in Grave Spirit makes enemies drop health orbs. So you get a ton of health orbs, and then you can make that even more absurd and still get health orbs even when Grave Spirit is down if you do use a companion still with Synth Deconstruct on, like this Nautilus here, for example. This is my fairly standard Nautilus build that I recommend most people use. So it's got Synth Deconstruct, which will give any enemy hurt by your companion a 25% chance to drop health orbs. We're also benefiting from Reinforced Bond on the Nautilus Prime, since it is able to get past 1200 shields. So that's a nice 60% fire rate buff to your Galaxion, for example. It'll also group up people for you via Cordon, which will make, again, the freezing of groups of enemies even easier. And the really fun part comes when we go to the Verglass Prime here. So this is a Shivering Contagion stat stick, basically. So not only will this build prime cold, radiation, and gas for you, and so since one of those is cold, it will freeze enemies for you along with your own Galaxion, but I have Shivering Contagion on this build, and Shivering Contagion, fun fact, when applied on any primary, whether it be yours or your companion's rifle, it's actually not just a primary mod. It affects your entire loadout, so any cold procs that you cause with anything in your loadout, whether that be a Warframe ability, primary, secondary, or melee, they will all spread cold procs within 6 meters, making this a actually really insane cold spreading stat stick. If you want to go even further, you can use a Grimoire, and you can give yourself either a up to 60% duration buff or 60% strength buff with one of the invocations. But for today, just to show off some of the crazy crit damage that Dagath adds, let's throw on a fan favorite, the Dual Toxicist. I'll put on my regular non-ribbon blast build here. Very fun. And now with all of that out of the way, let's go and showcase how gross this build actually is. All right, so here we are on Lua. Let's go ahead and get this mission started. You can see Nautilus is already going to work grouping guys up. So you pop your third here, and you go in invulnerable, even without popping your Ice Storm. Since we have so much duration on this build, you still have around 28-ish seconds, and then with Ice Storm, it's over 30 seconds of invulnerability every single time that you pop this. Let's get that first up. You'll see it applies that armor strip. Along with the slow, they get slower and slower and slower until they basically turn into statues. And it's also, of course, a massive damage increase because you're removing that armor. And on Steel Path, enemies quickly get up to that armor cap of 2700, which is 90% damage reduction. So taking off all of that armor is essentially a 10x damage multiplier. And you can see we can already go back into that third. And now with Ice Storm stacked up a little bit, it was closer to 30 seconds. Keep killing guys. Here you can see the TennoCreate, again with no ribbon or anything, just with the buffs from Dagath, is able to absolutely shred everything that you look at. Nautilus is going crazy hard, grouping guys up for you, which makes makes those spreading cold procs even easier to maintain. Constantly keep your Ice Storm stacked up, not a problem. The ability, if you look at the bottom left, you'll see there's a cooldown on the ability. While your Grave Spirit is down, since I had a brief respite on the build, and if you want, you can also use Augur mods in your secondary, you can use your fourth ability to Shield Gate, because in conjunction with Brief Respite plus Blind Rage, making the ability cost more, it gives you over 200 shields back, which makes shield gating while you're actually vulnerable between casts of your 3 really easy to maintain. Let's turn that one back on. You can see it's 85 seconds. I just cast an 85-second version of O Phantom Eye because this build has so much duration. Very easy to maintain your abilities, very easy to stay alive. The survivability is ridiculous. As you can see, this build has infinite energy. It has insane damage. It actually really, it makes me wonder every time when I play Dagath, why do more people not understand how absolutely cracked out of her mind she is? Whenever I get her as an elite deep rock immediate choice, for example, I almost always pick her because a build like this makes any of the content that EDA throws at you just a complete joke. You can absolutely burn through it. You're invincible. You do crazy damage. You slow guys down. I mean, what's not to like? Let's use that 4th here. Now, really fun fact about the 4th, if you notice that when you cast this, the horses, they stand still for a moment. They kind of rise up in the air and then they attack. The horses deal damage every 0.25 seconds. So basically they have a quarter-second damage tick that goes off very rapidly. And that starts the moment that they spawn. So if you get an enemy like an Acolyte spawned in, and you pop your 4th ability, your Recall these cavalry right on top of them, you can hit them with 2, 3, or maybe even 4 ticks of that damage, and basically immediately wipe Acolytes the moment they spawn. It also acts as an armor strip against doomed enemies, and since, of course, everybody we look at is doomed, thanks to the combination of the Augment and O Phantom Eyes easily applying it for us, even before we shoot, you can apply that armor strip to Acolytes, like I said, as well. You see we have a 24-second cooldown. Let's see how fast we can get that down. Let's pop our horse, and it's gone, just like that. Because we just got so many kills so easily with the 4th ability in conjunction with an armor strip. Again, I don't know what else to say. I love this build. I think this Warframe is fantastic. Pretty much the only thing I'm waiting on now is the Acolyte. In fact, I'll skip that wait for you guys. Let's jump ahead in the video to where they spawn in. Alright, so the Acolyte is coming in just a moment here. Let's see how the fan favorite, the Dual Toxicist, does against them. First, I'll show you the fact that the Phantom Eyes does work on them. They do get stripped and they do get slowed down. And I actually just lost the 3rd, but that's okay. We're still not going to die. They're definitely going to die, though. Very easily. There they go. No armor. Slowed down. They can't kill you. That's all there is to it. All right, hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you liked the build, let me know down below. What do you think of it? Do you like Dagath? Have you even considered using Dagath before this? And if you do, come back, tell me how amazing she is, hopefully, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.